Speak up, reach out, go vote, show out. From your neighbor to City Hall. Reach out, go vote, show out. Serving people is what it's all about. Reach out, go vote, show out. Frankfort civic proud. Speak up, reach out, go vote, show out.
You ready, Ray?
I'm ready.
All right. From Capitol Halls to Bourbon Balls, this is the City of Frankfort podcast for the Frankfortians. We're swapping stories, spilling tea, and celebrating the quirks that make Kentucky's capital the best hometown around. Today's episode is all about preparedness, what it means, why it matters, and how it looks right here in Frankfort. Joining me today is Ray Kinney, the City of Frankfort's Director of Emergency Management. Ray and his team are responsible for planning, coordinating, and responding when emergencies happen. Everything from severe weather and flooding, we know well about that, to large-scale incidents that most of us hope we'll never experience. Ray, thanks for being here with us today.
Thanks for inviting me. Glad to be here.
Good. Before we get into emergency management, Ray, tell us a little bit about yourself. I know a little bit about you. You and I have worked together for a number of years now. I started with the city in 2001. You were already here. Mm-hmm. I think you may have been a lieutenant at the time. And then I started at the PD in 2004. You were a captain. But tell us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been in public service, kind of where you're from. I think originally from Louisville, and what kind of the roundabout, what brought you into emergency management?
Okay. Well, you're right. We worked together for a good while together. And, I was with the police department at the time, but I originally grew up in Louisville. And I went to Trinity High School and went to U of L because I was fascinated by police. I worked with the fast food industry down in Louisville, always had law enforcement officers around. Got to know a lot of the first district, City of Louisville Police Department. Mm-hmm. Back in the 80s, there was a lot of lawsuits going on, so hiring was in a big freeze. Mm-hmm. And I was applying for areas around Louisville and just making a big circle. And applied, my buddy and I applied here at Frankfort and St. Matthews at the same time. He went to St. Matthews, I came here. So it was just a matter of how we got picked, and so we had kind of dual careers. It started here in late 87 and actually got out on patrol in 88 after the academy. So worked up through the ranks, sergeant, lieutenant, captain, and you're right, about 2001 was a lieutenant and made captain, I think it was 2002, and then retired in 2011. So all duties on the road, all was patrolled the entire time. Dare officer, accident reconstruction, tactical response unit, special events. By the time I got later in my career, a whole lot of special events. Mm-hmm. Local emergency planning committee meetings and dignitary protection that kind of went along with the response team. We did some stuff that way. So that's a little bit where I was, and then great opportunity to retire in 2011 with the economy the way it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I remember being a younger patrol officer in my day, and you would run these special events, and you'd hand out these sheets with everybody's assignments and things, and man, there'd be highlights and marker diagrams and everything. So really, preparedness. You've been doing this for a long time.
Yes, a long time. Our special events take a lot of law enforcement activity. Mm-hmm. Everything's got to be, down to the exact location, and traffic and people issues. So, those got made fun of a little bit on some of those pamphlets that we used to hand out, and they were all handmade and colored and marked up in pictures and things. But I like to see that being brought back when we ask the law enforcement to provide a safety or security traffic plan now.
Yeah. It's kind of funny because I know I've been to your office now up on the third floor at the by the EOC, And I've gone to you several times and been like, "Hey Ray, do you remember this from 2000 whatever?" And you'd be like, "I think I got some notes from back then," and
yeah,
pulling things out of the
there's a lot of
deep
paper
closet.
copies. We've had a change in digital media over the years.
Right.
I think at one time somebody asked for schedules, and they were on the old floppy disk.
Yeah, that was me. That was
the old
me
floppy
asking
disk, and I'm a saver of that because sometimes you have to go back to refer to what our history was. So,
yeah,
it's come, CDs, Google Drives now are the great big thing, which I hate. I hated when they brought Google in, but Google and Microsoft are partners on making things a whole lot easier and saving stuff. But still, that paper copy really comes into play a lot.
Yeah, well, I love that because I've figured out in my time, I've been in law enforcement. This is my 22nd year in law enforcement, and I've kind of figured out that that there was a reason why people did things the way that they did.
Absolutely.
It's kind of the old saying that those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it. So the sometimes the reason why we do things is because of we've made those mistakes in the past. We've found where we've fallen short. We've found where we've done things the right way, and those lessons have been learned.
Absolutely.
Over the history, and that's why it's important to kind of hold on to those so we don't forget. So after you got out of law enforcement, I know you did a couple different things. I think you were with the County Judge Executive's office for a little bit, and then eventually came back over into emergency management. What year did you start back with the city in emergency management?
I started right back in emergency management.
Okay.
I'd worked with, especially the local emergency planning committee, and been on that, and worked with the different entities and gone to meetings, and worked with Darren Rambo with we were doing the TRU stuff and the emergency medicine. Worked with Darren for a long time, and when I retired, they had an opening, and I came to work with him and Tommy Russell. So it worked 2012, 2013. I went over to fiscal court as deputy county judge executive. So 2013 and 2014, I was over there, and left in 2015. And then filled in, got assigned to some of these little task force and planning groups and things like that, and came back to emergency management back in 2017.
Okay, all right. Now with everything you got going on in emergency management, you've got a couple helpers over there.
I do.
That maybe the public doesn't, I know everybody knows you, but you've also got Mike Billings and Richard Frost as your kind of, I guess, are they deputy?
They're deputies.
Deputy emergency management.
They're deputy emergency management. So we kind of use the county titles, directors, deputy directors, such like that. But Richard Frost and Mike Billings come from the city fire department. They're both retired captains. Lots and lots of expertise. They've got military backgrounds, and they just really complement our office, because we're going to kind of get into some of this talk later, but hazardous materials, firefighting response, I'm good at law enforcement. I'm good at planning. They're especially specialized in training in hazardous materials, firefighting, which is, half of what we do.
Right. So let's start at the beginning. When people hear emergency management, they often think about disasters or crisis moments. But your work is it's a lot broader than that. Can you talk us through the scope of your role as the Director of Emergency Management for the City of Frankfort?
Okay. So, we become complacent with what we do every day with the emergencies that we call. 911, when someone has an emergency, they call 911. And, it could be a life or death situation for one person. And our office works directly with the Frankfort Dispatch, maintaining an awareness of what those calls are. So it may not be the whole entire community, but for one person at any given time, that 911 call is their entire life. And, we have to be aware of what's happening, a medical emergency, a traffic collision, a spill, bad weather, whatever it might be. We might be called up, different entities to come help with that person. And so a management function comes in when it used to be a number of 3 agencies were involved. They've gone away from that now. We can respond to any emergency. It doesn't have to be a disaster. It doesn't have to be a declared disaster. It doesn't fit the definition, but anything that involves life safety or possible loss of serious physical injury or death, we can respond to those. We'll help manage all the entities that come into play. We think police and fire, but public works, public health, social groups all have some kind of function when we have an emergency.
Yeah. I think people don't understand even who all gets involved. I just look back. I know this is, for us, to me, it almost just seems like yesterday with the flooding.
Yes.
There were so many entities
Yes.
that came into play with that. Not only did you have 911, and you had the police department, and you had the fire department, but then we had, even just the police department, we had other agencies that came in to assist. Kentucky State Police, Shelbyville came in. Of course, the SO was phenomenal in helping us with that. But then you had FEMA, the Red Cross. I don't even know. You could probably list all the agencies that were involved in that. But there are so many, and to coordinate all that. I mean, I know you remember this like it was yesterday.
It's still, we're coming back on an anniversary of the February and April floods. So, yeah, it's still ongoing. We haven't fully recovered from that. But you're right. We've got city police. Then we've got all the city agencies, public works, planning, finance, HR, safety, all those people within the city government. And we've got sewer and water. All involved. We had a water outage, water shortage. We had to shut down the water, the plant board, all of our utilities. When we get into a big event, it goes on and on a local level. And then we had Red Cross, Salvation Army, our local folks. The CARES group stepped up for sheltering housing. We got a little bit of everything for the flood on the local level. We're the state capital. So we had city and county, and then we had all the state entities, and then we had the federal government because we had such a large-scale disaster with our city. So, everything starts local and ends local, but it can go up county, state, federal, and then back down. We still have FEMA people in town that are still working with us a year later.
Yeah.
We will be in recovery for another couple more years as we rebuild all the stuff that was damaged.
Yeah.
And get everybody back housed. We've still got some people still displaced.
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't think that, I've been involved in these, being in law enforcement so long, but never to the scale of the flood. The second largest flood in recorded history in Kentucky. I've never been involved in anything to that scale. I mean, the Emergency Operations Center was just, it was controlled chaos.
Yeah, that's a good word.
Controlled chaos, but there was just, there's so many people in there, so many people working on different things. It's kind of wild, Well,
the fear, I think, the very first day when we brought all the department heads from the city and county in there, the look of anxiety, knowing that we were going to be faced with something we've never did. And then by the second week, I guess, because we went almost 2 weeks for that EOC, things were back down. We realized we'd gotten over the hump. We stepped through the to the top part and then started working back down. But everybody came together. They did incredible work. Just phenomenal work.
Yeah. I'm going to pick on you a little bit about this now because speaking of the flood, I got to pick on you a little bit. It's just so everybody knows. Kind of what happened. I went to Ray on Monday or Tuesday and I said, Ray, do I need to move the cars behind the flood wall? Ray said, no.
No, we're good.
No, we're good. We're good. I went to him the next day. Ray, do we need to move these cars? No, I think we're good. I think we're good. And I said, Ray, don't call me down here on Friday night at midnight. Tell me to move these cars. I went ahead and moved them the next day.
Yes.
Goodness.
So the Weather Service can only use 2 or 3 days of forecast information.
Yeah.
They've got actual information and they've got forecast information. We had a week's worth of rain. I think we were, somewhere in the 15-inch rain total for the state. Multi-state area, Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana. We had this little area just dropping water, 3 or 4 inches, 5 inches, 3 or 4 inches. And yes, we can only incrementally go up. They can only go up so far with their predictions with forecasted amounts.
Yeah.
They can't guess for a whole week, or we would have done things a whole lot different.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, those initial predictions, you're good. We don't need to do all that preparation work. But, we know, generally on a flood, it comes up relatively slow, that we do have a little bit of time to prepare. And we got all our flood walls in, we got the cars moved, but it's that conversation and planning way early. And you understanding now, the different things that we may have to do to assist in the public works side. It's our cars that are parked behind there, but the public works has to have that space. So many at a certain level of the river, they do that.
Yeah, I had to pick on you a little bit.
Absolutely, yeah. I felt good.
It makes me laugh.
I think we just moved in February, and we didn't want to move them again in April.
Yeah,
and,
well, and with things like that, a lot of people maybe don't understand. Like, we're just going on the information that we're being given.
Yeah, forecast and models.
Yeah.
Forecast and models.
And then they constantly change. Everybody that lives in Kentucky knows that if you don't like the weather, wait 24 hours, it's going to change.
Yeah.
And that's the way it is when these forecasters are trying to predict this stuff. I mean, it just changes sometimes just almost hour by hour. Sure. I mean, it did with the flood. The flood. There was. I mean, I remember a couple times we get this bit of information, and then an hour, maybe 2 hours later, it's changed. And
the FEMA, you guys have had the classes. We all take the same classes, but the expanding incidents and expanding operational periods and the scalable work and up and down and back and forth all really comes into play in reality.
Okay. Yeah. So we've kind of already touched on this, so I'm just going to skip over. We're going to talk about who all you work with, but we've talked about that not only with Richard and Mike, but in all the other entities that we coordinate with. People probably don't realize how many other just even city entities that we're constantly coordinating with, whether it's streets or sewers or whatever. And then on the being the state capital, there's a lot of state entities that we work with, and we work with the you and I both work with the state police, being the governor.
Yeah, state police, fish and wildlife, legislative security, a whole batch of people on the law enforcement side.
Yeah. So one of the ways that the community sees you the most is out at public events. We have a lot of them right here in Frankfort. And tell us more about how emergency management works with our special events here in Frankfort.
Okay. So we're a city county office. We do work through the city and contract and do the work for the county also. So it's kind of like dispatch. We take the calls wherever they may be in the county. Predominantly, the city has got a whole lot more special events downtown. And like I said, back in our law enforcement days, we did the security and traffic plans. Now it's a total plan for all the different people who come in and want to put a special event on. And by ordinance, we're involved. Legally, if you want to say it that way, but also in practicality, we have the contacts and to let other people know what's going to impact them. Downtown Frankfort, tourism, I don't know how we would not do it without, especially the community events, special events office in Frankfort. They get a permit and, they immediately send it out to all different people to ask, what will this impact you? What's the issues? And a lot of times we'll come together with special events and meet in the EOC and start planning, hopefully months, but weeks and days ahead of time, all the logistics. When we disrupt normal people behavior, we bring people in from out of town, we involve kids or alcohol or dangerous events or, railroad tracks or utilities or things like that. it's best if everybody knows what's going on. We just don't know what might happen. Basic safety, police and fire, are our big to do. When Richard, Mike, and I are at these special events, we're always watching for the hazards. We're aware of them. We plan for them. We're able to contact the law enforcement, contact the fire, EMS. Bad things happen. People trip, fall, get hurt. Things pop up, and we're able to coordinate response. So, response in, response out, keep things going. But, it's that planning ahead of time. We solve so many different problems, like water, porta potties. You don't think about it until you get a whole bunch of people out at a public event and the porta potty plan. Those are things that all come into play. And we've got a script that we go by and, check mark, what's going to be affected and, who the other partners. When you bring food in, you have health department, those kind of things. Weather. All these events are outdoors. And we work to watch and maintain what's going on with the weather. And it just drives so many different things, whether we can have an event or whether we have to adjust schedules. So,
Maddie's great to work with. It's the special events coordinator for the city. She's been phenomenal. I think she's been doing it a little over a year now. Took Blair Hecker's spot in that position, and she's been great to work with. She's always coordinating, sending out emails. We do have regular, a few meetings every year. And especially on large events that are coming up, we usually meet several times. We're talking Bourbon on the Banks, usually is a couple meetings, Christmas parade, and anytime there's an inauguration.
Oh gosh, yeah.
That is a major planning event. So, and we bring all those different departments and things into these meetings and talk about this stuff. It's kind of one of those failure to plan is a plan to fail.
Yes.
Yes. And so we've got to be on the same page with this stuff. So we're getting ready to get into spring, Ray. Last spring was a lot. So as we start getting into spring, severe weather, big concern for everybody here in Kentucky, just the way, everybody knows the weather here and what we've experienced over the years. So talk about spring weather in Frankfort, kind of the biggest risks to our residents and what they should be thinking about.
So, years ago, we had spring weather when you had tornado season for a couple months there, April, May, June, and then it calmed down. Then we went into a drought. But now Kentucky is all year round. We can get a tornado. We've had tornadoes every month. We can have snow when it's not supposed to snow. We can have heat when it's not supposed to have heat. But spring has a tendency to be a little more volatile, pop-up storms. Those EF0, EF1 tornadoes are a whole lot more frequent, the little spin-ups. And we see that almost any chance we have a thunderstorm. Lightning is really a big one. Lightning can take out a whole big group of people. Wind, we've had special events out where a wind gust will come in and there go all the canopies and you've got metal tents flying. So, we're really big on the weather. Hot, cold, you can have heat, overheat, underheat, so those things. So all aspects of the weather really come into play. And we work closely with the Weather Service. We can get updated reports specific to our event. But Weather Service out of Louisville does a phenomenal job of getting information out to us on a regular basis, and we can kind of manage that. So again, a situational awareness kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we'll have an eventful spring.
Yeah, we already started off this year in January. It's really got us going.
Yeah. Flooding is something that Frankfort we know all too well about. What would be your biggest safety message when it comes to flooding?
Yeah, it's again awareness. Are you in the floodplain? The FEMA does some great work with mapping. Your local planner, either the county or city, can help you if you have any kind of issues with floodplain. We know what roads have a tendency to flood. We've worked with the National Weather Service to create impact areas that are available out there to the public. We know the floods that we've had, the history of the floods. Aerial flooding, river creek flooding, they're all dangerous. People can, in a couple inches of water, have a really bad situation. Driving in flooded water is a no-no. Your car stalls out, then you're stuck, especially swift water. We've had fatalities that way. When you get into raging water, it's tough. You can't swim, you run into debris in the water. So regular old water coming up is nasty too. It's contaminated. We preach that back in our flood. Electric houses, the power doesn't go off, they're electrified. The water around it is electrified. Don't go in your house when it's damp. We work with the plant board, Kentucky Utilities, and Bluegrass Energy to de-energize those areas that we can, but things pop up. So, floods are just nasty all the way around. They do a lot of damage. They create mold. They create health issues. People go out into nasty water. They, our health department gave shots for all of our responders and the public. So we need to be real careful.
Yeah. And I'm going to say this for all you watching or listening. Do not drive into high water. Do not drive into high water. It's crazy. Like, that is such a message that's out there all the time. But we have people do it all the time, and they get stuck. We've had drownings.
They're looking straight ahead, especially at night when you can't see where you're going, or the people who are comfortable driving across a creek. We've got a lot of low water crossings here in Frankfort. They're comfortable doing that, but the velocity of the water can displace the vehicle, and then you're no longer on the roadway or it tips over. Been on several of those rescues before, and it's a bad situation all the way around because just how dangerous it is. Yeah, and
but it's crazy how often that happens. Yep. It really is.
And we do our best with our transportation people to put signs up.
Yes,
but the high water, the aerial flooding that we run into can happen anywhere in the county. Anywhere. A ditch line gets blocked up, a culvert gets blocked up. We have some common areas that we know of, we watch for. Our road and utility guys, they work to keep those ditches clean. They've got every time we have an event come up, we call, hey, get the ditches cleaned out because that water needs a place to go to.
Yeah. Flash flooding, but very dangerous as well. We've had, I know with my time working with the police department, we've had some flash floods. It seems to be more with the flash flooding that the incidents we've had have maybe been more in the county with flash flooding, but that's always a dangerous issue.
Everybody knows Frankfort. We've got high spots and we've got ravines and hollows, like Devil's Hollow Road or something like that. And if you get, especially in the springtime, you get a storm that just sits right over top of you and dumps 2 or 3 or 5 or 6 or 7. Or in one case, we knew we had 11 inches of rain dropped out in Millville. It's going to be torrential flash flooding down those creek beds. And then if that creek runs underneath the roadway or over the roadway, then that's where people get in a mess. Water appeared where it wasn't before.
Yeah, it's really, flash flooding to me can be one of the scariest events, just because it happens so quickly, and you think you're safe, and then all of a sudden you've got water just coming up out of everywhere. So
a big part of our office is communication. We work with the city communication, Blair Hecker, work with Andrew Tippett, the judge, the mayor, to get a common message out. We saw that in the flood. The people aren't infighting. They're doing their own thing, but they're doing a common message that we want all of our citizens to do. We've got Facebook pages and X pages and all that stuff going on. Websites. We try to direct people to get the information they can. Work great with the radio stations, with Cable 10. We work really well with our outside Lexington and Louisville weather news peoples. work with the National Weather Service and meteorologists, that kind of thing. But communication's a big thing. We deal with Ready Frankfort. We do Ready Frankfort for Facebook page and on X. More so the Facebook. That just seems to be the common way a lot of people get information. Years ago, it was just trying to get your foot in the door on a Facebook page. We wrote these little plans. I want to get to 5,000. I want to get to 6,000 or 7,000. We've exceeded 15,000 people now on our page. But that's just one part of the message. Because you run your page for the police department, and Blair runs the page for the city, and Andrew running the page. I can call you all, text. You got to do usually a text. Police, fire, sheriff, and get that message out. Get everybody to reshare that information. And we've all got between us a whole lot of people that will go tell somebody else. That message we need to get across. So, our critical incidents, we do that. Road closures being one of the biggies. But should we have a hazardous spill, we can use that resource also. Missing people, our office is really big into that. But that message is, shared.
Yeah. And, one thing, I would encourage everybody to follow and share Ready Frankfort, the Frankfort Police Department's, any of our pages, whether it's Facebook, X, Instagram, we've got all that. Same Ready Frankfort. I know you guys are on X and Facebook, City of Frankfort. Make sure that they follow those official pages for these kind of alerts, because there's a lot of misinformation that goes out all the time about anything. So especially when we're talking about any kind of emergency management situation, whether it's flooding, snow, whatever. Follow those pages. Make sure you get your information through the right sources as far as that goes. So I think that just kind of wraps up everything. But Ray, two things. Your nickname around the city of Frankfort. Ray of Sunshine.
Ray of Sunshine, yeah. Yeah, I heard that this morning already. Welcome, the Ray of Sunshine. Yeah.
Ray, do you want to tell everybody how you got that nickname?
Yeah, I've actually got one of those little sunny, spongy, grabby things I keep in my truck, and the sewer department's little emoji for their poop turd, I guess you want to call it, if that's safe to say. But yeah, good days and bad days. But yeah, and a lot of times when I come in, I'm going to spoil the good day. I'm going to spoil the good day with bad stuff. So yeah, a ray of sunshine. But if we prepare people, I try to lessen that harm a little bit. Yeah, ray of sunshine.
Ray of sunshine. It's just because we like to pick on you.
Yeah, it's already too late if you're past that and you're in the bad weather. So
yeah. Just so everybody knows. Ray's not a Debbie Downer. He tries to make sure we're prepared.
Yep.
So he's not a Debbie Downer. So, Ray, we want to thank you and your staff so much for everything you do to keep this community safe. Here's a hoping for a very smooth spring.
Yes.
And we like to end each of our shows with a Frankfort rapid fire.
Okay.
So, I know you're from Louisville, but you are a Frankfortian. You've been here for a long time now. And we would just want to hear some of your takes. So you say the first thing that comes to mind, no explanation needed, okay?
Okay.
All right. Favorite snack?
Oh, ice cream.
I love ice cream. Most overlooked emergency supply?
Probably water. People just don't keep enough of it. They get a few bottles and they don't keep enough.
I would agree with that. Frankfort favorite Frankfort event?
I love the Derby, the springtime. Getting past that bad wet winter weather. Mm-hmm. Everybody's more really positive. So I love that Derby event leading up to it.
Winter or summer?
Oh, definitely summer. Yeah, I hate winter.
Yeah, me too. Favorite Frankfort Mexican restaurant?
Oh, that's a tough one. I got a whole bunch of them. Yeah, I've got to go. Even Garcia's and Don Jockey's and Mi Fiesta, and they're all great. Miguel's. You know, I eat a lot of Mexican restaurant. And my Cuban food, my Havana rumba and my Mimi Manchitas. I like to eat. I love to eat.
Rumba. I've been to
Yeah, that's a trip to Louisville, but
okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry I had to go out there.
Yeah. On your day off, we can find you fill in the blank.
Oh, you know, probably at home working on something at the house. There's always something to fix and messing with the dogs.
I was going to say messing with the dogs.
Yeah, there's always something to do. You know, we enjoy getting the dogs out, come downtown, walk around, and get them out. So,
Yeah.
Yep.
For everybody that doesn't know, Ray is a greyhound guy.
Yep.
How many greyhounds do you have right now?
Got 3 right now.
3 right now.
Yep. We've had a mix of dachshunds, mutt dogs, and greyhounds for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
right now we're at 3 greyhounds and 1 wiener dog. Yeah, it's kind of a mix, but they all get along just fine.
Yeah. All right. Well, Ray, thanks for joining us this week. Fellow Frankfortians. We'll catch you again next week on the City of Frankfort podcast. Don't forget to follow the City of Frankfort podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, and make sure you subscribe to our show wherever you get your podcasts.